Hello, good evening. Thanks to come here. It's like the week before. It's a pretty week. I think it's the worst week. And well, this is the second part of the seminar about controversies of our times, as you can see. It's an honor to present today with this researcher, international researcher, the last Thursday presented D'Ambrosio and Bologna, and today present Sara Baranzoni. And I think it's a very dynamic to follow, like the last week, the two presentations, and later we can open the debate. I think the last week was very interesting debate generated between the audience, students. It was very interesting. Okay, Sara?
Thank you for coming, and we're happy to see you. And well, I thank you because my paper is really something that is not really at the beginning, but the first steps of this research about the Anthropocene and about how we can consider the Anthropocene as an Anthropocene, he says. So it's something, well, you'll see. I'll begin with a short video that will introduce one of the main speakers of this scene, that is the philosopher Friedrich Nera. He's a French philosopher, but he works in the United States. And this is a video made by him, if
It's important the sound.
well, it's part of the video, but maybe we can check if we can have the sound.
No, I think it's a problem.
Yeah, maybe it's a problem of the cable. Okay, but so it's just to make you understand something.
Who is the director?
It's Friedrich Nera. He's a philosopher that teaches cultural studies and yes. It's very strange with my screen. It was just to introduce you to the topic and to some scenario of this question of the Anthropocene. Well, something that we have learned investigating on this topic of the Anthropocene is that the discourse is plenty of contradiction and controversies, and that the Anthropocene calls on the expertise of many kinds of scientific knowledge and elaborate technical apparatuses, and yet the relation between all the dimensions of the discourse is anything but obvious and difficult to reconcile. But surely, scientific, economic, environmental, political, and cultural issues are at stake at the same time, and any actor on this stage thinks to have the right discourse, so that while approaching this topic we find ourselves immediately floated in an archipelago of thoughts, positions, and lines of debate from which to negotiate and discuss this complex post-Holocene terrain from a variety of perspectives. The first question that we could raise is, so who has the right to talk about these matters? Or better, does somebody have the right to silence somebody else? Well, those who have led the charge in raising alarm about the Anthropocene have been scientific workers. Those who attempted to deny its significance and doing so through mystification, which, it must be acknowledged, nevertheless draw on critiques of science. Critical theory needs not just to submit itself to scientific knowledge, but it needs to accept its existence and the validity of its methods. With the traditional methods of knowledge acquisition, the natural science on one side and the humanities on the other, mankind has reached a limit. And as Mackenzie Ward said, in the present, it's time to work transversally in mixed teams with the objective of producing forms of knowledge and action that are problem-centric rather than tradition and discipline-centric. Critical thought avoids the inevitable fate of becoming hypocritical theory when it takes its problem from without, from the world of praxis rather than from within its own discursive games. So, this ideological battleground, the perspective of humanities, can be resumed with the name Anthropocene, thought as a social or cultural ecology. And how are we to treat this scene? I had another video, but I thought maybe it's better not to show it because of the lack of sound, so I just put this image and say that this scene has to be treated as a murder scene, the scene of a murder or a crime scene, where we have a place, a plot, and a combination of actors, and a combination of factors too. And in this cold case, what do we know about the place, the earth? Or what do we know about the plots or all the narratives that are built on it? Which story is told? I come back to Friedrich Nietzsche, that was the first philosopher here mentioned, that in an introductory essay of a book of the already mentioned Professor Chakrabarty that Paolo mentioned last week, identifies a general climate turn in theory. That is for him a kind of turning point that we should not avoid and that we should take far beyond the general sprinkling or informative culture made by cultural industries or schools, and that has to touch every field of research. So talking about Anthropocene is for him like recapitulating the entire human history, to use it at the same time as a memory or a dark prophecy of what happens and what we did, starting from the production of anthropos by the anthropos itself, until the reflection on thought itself, its material conditions, the relations with culture and its forms, and with economical political orientation. The one that you see up there is a book that he published yesterday. So starting from the study of cognitive capitalism, that is to say of contemporary capitalism based on the production and the exploitation of knowledge, passing through biopolitical technologies, we have to build the other scene of biopolitics, economy, ecology, which has to be inseparable from a questioning of environmental disasters and new technologies. We can always say that such ecological turn, is nothing new, and that it's usual for critical thought to have turns, to embrace a turning point when it encounters something so powerful. But this time the scene we are facing has a dramatic allure, because its object is about the condition for life and its reproduction. Or we could say that climate change is nothing more than the transition towards a new point of equilibrium, and that as other turning points or bifurcations, life will find its own new path. But, as we learned from Prigoghine's theory of bifurcations, there is in principle no possibility of knowing where this path will bring, if towards entropic disruption or towards a new form of the living. So, first chapter, general ecology. This is a picture from an exhibition in Berlin that was called Anthropocene, as precisely as I use this term. That is not my invention, I have to say. It has already been used. Okay. Today the ecological thought cannot be avoided, but in which sense we have to take this ecological thought? Well, you know that ecology is from the Greek oikos, that is house or environment, and logon, that is the study of. So we can think more generally as the study of our environment, but according to Gregory Bateson, we should have some more broad concept of an ecology that involves the ecology of the mind, as is the title of his most famous book, seen as a network of interaction relating the individual with his society and his species and with the universe at large. Or we can speak with Félix Guattari, it was a French psychologist and philosopher, who said that the ecology must stop being associated with the image of a small nature-loving minority. Ecology, in my sense, I'm quoting, questions the whole of subjectivity and capitalistic power formation. Or also, ecology must stop being associated with the image, the only true response to the ecological crisis is on a global scale, provided that it brings about an authentic political, social and cultural revolution, reshaping the objectives of the production of both material and immaterial assets. The one of Guattari is an understanding of connectivity, of balanced system, network topography and complexity theory that are fundamental to the way in which this ecosophical model operates. In contrast to capitalistic systems predicated on economic growth, Guattari's ecosophy seeks to balance, allied with the revaluation of what we value, and requires a reorientation of thought in order to comprehend the interaction between ecosystems, the mechanosphere, or technosphere, if you want to use a more common word, and the social and individual universes of reference, we must learn to think transversely, is said. And somebody can hear an already known voice, the one of Simone or his updating made by Stigler. But coming back to the Anthropocene and coming back to Neira, it is necessary to intellectually invest this notion for him because it's not only a question of ecology, but we have to prevent it from the big risk of becoming the hegemonic signifier of a constructivist euphoria. This euphoria is stated this way. You will find the formula almost everywhere on the internet. Welcome to the Anthropocene. That is to say, welcome to a period in which we have demonstrated to be able to modify the Earth at our will, or worse, welcome to a world of geoengineers who believe that the Earth is a hollow box that we can transform at will. This approach contains a danger that has not to be underrated. And I'm quoting from an essay that my student know, that is written by Stephen, Crutzen, and McNeil. Crutzen is, as you know, the one that has invented the term of Anthropocene, and they say, the severity of global change, particularly change to the climate system, may force societies to consider more drastic options. In this situation, some argue for geoengineering solution, a highly controversial topic. Geoengineering involves purposeful manipulation by humans of global-scale Earth system processes with the intention of counteracting anthropogenically driven environmental change such as greenhouse warming. Nothing strange, but Neirad says this leads also straight to some other warring project, like the one of a chemical shield, which is supposed to protect us from climate change without compelling us to modify our ways of life and our conception of the world. It reveals that the meaning of the Anthropocene, I mean its dominant signification, is the supreme expression of the kind of human exceptionalism, and I was quoting from Neira. In other words, in the Anthropocene, the discourse on environment risks to arise only its environmental side, which refers to an inner zone more close to the single body and its niche, that is, to protect, to limit us, to protect our local, individual situation, and not a general ecology, as I said before. There is now another point, chapter 2, that was called General Agency and Matter, but the space was short, so I just put Agency and Matter. And it calls for another actor on our stage, that is Jane Bennett, that has written a very interesting book that is called Vibrant Matter. And it's very interesting the use that she does of this word matter, because she uses it as a noun, as a substantive, or both a verb. So for her, matter matters. Okay, the main one of the main affirmations of her theory is that all matter is pulsing with life. Bennett puts a radical conception of materialism and matter in her book, with implication for politics, ecology, and the everyday ways we think of ourselves, other, and our world. But what are the political implication of recognizing that everything, including rocks, garbage dumps, and schools of bread, is alive. What she says is that we usually think about the world in terms of agents and actors. They are usually people, and often the most important actors are thought to be the important people, president, leaders, etc. It is often assumed that humans are in charge and objects and materials are simply used, transformed, or set in motion by us. By emphasizing our dense interconnection and interdependencies, Bennett troubles this idea of a human-centered action in the world. Of course, humans act in the world and make a difference, but we never act alone, and it's impossible to say exactly who or what causes an event to take place. Bennett introduces the concept of distributive agency, which does not posit a subject as the root cause of an effect. This is distinguished from tradition that defines agency as a moral capacity linked to an advanced plan or intention. These are instead always a swarm of vitalities at play, and her idea is the task becomes to identify the contours of the swarm and the kind of relation that obtains between its bits. All matter is pulsing with life, we said. But what does she mean by life in this sense? Things, for her, aren't simply alive in a mechanistic way. It is composed of electrons and atoms in motion, nor are imbued with a non-material or transcendent spirit. They are alive in their complex interrelationships, entanglements, and propensities for open-ended change. Neither we are in front of some pan-psychic New Age philosophy. Most of the time we think of objects as passive and stable things, and we humans are the active subjects in the world. Bennett wants to dissolve this binary between subject and object, showing how, for instance, worms, rats, or gun-scott residue sample can all be actants. They have the capacity to animate, to act, to produce effects, dramatic and subtle. In her view, objects are alive because of their capacities to make difference in the world, to have effects, to shape the web of interrelationships of which they are part. In fact, from this perspective, there's no such thing as objects or subjects, and we and they are never entirely passive or stable. They are more like crystallization of processes, and everything is in process, constantly undergoing transformation, constantly undergoing modifications. So all matter is alive in this sense, and because it is in a process, complex interwoven web of materials, all affecting each other, competing, forming alliances, initiating new processes and dissipating others. And humans are inextricably enmeshed in these webs that Bennett calls assemblages. And Bennett is always trying to figure out why all this matters and what the implication might be for politics, ecology, and everyday life. For instance, taking seriously the idea that everything is alive would mean recognizing that a vital materiality can never really be thrown away, for it continues its activities even as a discarded or unwanted commodity. Alive doesn't mean good. Garbage dumps are alive, and their toxins are always seeping into the earth and bubbling into the air. But, and we come back to the main rat that I said to you was the main actor on the stage, to understand that to contest human exceptionalism, we have to understand that to contest human exceptionalism does not only mean to criticize anthropocentrism or to propose a flat ontology where humans and non-humans are put on the same footing. Contrasting to this flatness, he argues that to contest exceptionalism is to give rise to powerful differences, to generate outsides, and to assign a status of exception to every existential arising. If we want to avoid the idealist position, I am quoting, which merely affirms non-human agency, it's necessary to consider this agency in a program of political, social, and technological mediation. Because one never immediately passes from an ontological potential to a political transformation, it is necessary to create mediations. If we want another Anthropocene, this is the end of the quote, we have to choose between the technologies that we want to use and to create and the technologies that we don't want. Only beneficial technological and political mediations can express and guarantee this kind of edges. Chapter 3. Technologies of the Anthropocene. As the science historian Jürgen Wren has famously said, the Anthropocene is a process that reflects about itself and where we have to pay attention to several indicators. By moving into the Anthropocene, we make the planet more sensitive to our actions, and that's why the Anthropocene should be called the age of sensitivity. As our collective behavior shapes a new world, a lot, if not everything, depends on whether we humans learn to extend our sensitivity way beyond the human sphere. And what we can see is that this reflection is supported today by thousands and some millions of technology of measuring that are called sensing station, for instance, like carbon flux measurement systems, biodiversity plots, oceanic buoys, etc. Through this sensor technology, we are helped to understand the unfolding of the Anthropocene. Science is building up a new way of sensory system for planet Earth, an internet of all things, not only of commercial products, but a system that helps us listen to stones, plants, animals in a deeper way. But will this not only increase data volumes, but also our sensitivity towards what happens to all other life forms we share the planet with? And this bring us to the last point of this presentation. Inscribing themselves in that set of technologies that produce a continuum of global information to anticipate the risk to avoid any change of the conditions of life, these technologies can easily become a political instrument in the hands of reactionary powers, such as that are able to transform the burden of anxiety naturally entailed in the new in the rejection of any change. The principle of prevention or of precaution that is folded in what has been called algorithmic governmentality, that is, the prediction, anticipation, control, and subtle direction of our activities, thanks to the data we produce, is what consent to governments to keep proceeding with the actual form of production, something that sometimes is also called lasting or sustainable development. And this is astonishing because it is called like this, being a kind of disturbing idea that we can continue with the ecotechnic development to last and to bring it to last as much as possible and with all means that we are without changing anything. And also, aside of this, a kind of division of the world that is explained in the term of preventive wars. This is a very complicated idea, and that I am always taking from there. So the very last question is a question of times and risks. What is implied in those notions is the contemporary anguish about the fact that nothing seems to last. This will not last, nothing lasts forever, nothing is immortal. This seems to be today our relation with time, or our chronopathology, as Neurath calls it, that makes us incapable of projecting ourselves in any kind of future, but the one that immediately follows the present instant. We can easily identify some of the viruses that has infected us. From the one hand, information and communication technologies that keep us in a sort of permanent real-time dimension. On the other hand, the norms of consumer capitalism, such as programmed obsolescence and the ideology of access, where objects become a short-term actualization of a drive connected to a flux of lifetime value services, that is, something that an enterprise can assure all life long. Further, the so-called need for adaptation, also known as flexibility, that is supported by the erasure of dead times in favor of the living time of production without limits. But what happens if we consider this time as the time of destruction? Destruction of physical resources by of psychical resources and also physical by their permanent exploitation, destruction of society by biopiracy, patents on plants, ancestral knowledges, attacks to biodiversity, that is the difference of life forms, including human, animal and vegetable life, life, not only in their life as such, but also in their conditions of possibility, mining the conditions of reproduction of the individual and of the society and of their relationships. The policies about climatic changes are what, in this Anthropocene, is perfectly embodying the risks. So, to the very optimistic title of Klein's book, This Changes Everything, we can thus reply that until now the neoliberal motto, how to change without changing anything, seems to prevail. If its most updated version includes the existence of catastrophes and environmental disasters that can be predicted by all the measuring instruments that we have, it is not to avoid them and the damages that they bring, but just to know before which are the risks, and so to be ready to react without any need for a previous decision, giving body to a pure informative thought of the world. This reminds us of the strangest of logics, the one that we have called the logic of pharmacon, where something that is meant to be a remedy represents at the same time poison. So all the attempts that we make to protect ourselves from the other, from the incalculable, from death, are in this way subverted into an autodestructive force. That is not to say that we don't need any protection. On the contrary, life is possible only with protections, especially technological protections. But these protections turn to be good only if correctly integrated with processes of constitution of being. But until the paradigm will be maintained of information as the earth of living, somebody will continue to pirate, patent, and isolate knowledge, isolating it from social contexts which are the only capable of making it flourish. So how political decisions should be taken? Firstly, responding to another question, that is, how to avoid to make impossible the possibility of a reproduction of life forms. For this, the key point is not how to save the planet, but how to transform the world. And we have to understand how this destruction has been made possible and to understand how the scene is becoming not only a crime scene, but the stage for a global crash test, where everything is destroyed to demonstrate, maybe through the opposition, that we are immortal. At this point, and to conclude, it can be funny to remind that, as the former EU Environmental Commissioner Margot Wallström said almost 10 years ago, instead of asking, is there life on Mars, the questions should be, is there still life on Earth? And maybe it's better that we make sure of having life on Earth in the future, so that if Martians come to visit us, we will be still here. Thanks.
Thank you, Sara. If you have some questions, some idea, or we don't, okay.
Now the audio is.
Yeah.
Because the audio of the first meeting.
Good evening. I'm here in not an expert in Anthropocene. I'm new in Anthropocene, but I'm not new in controversy, in scientific controversy. It was very interesting at the beginning of this semester when with the Prometheus were preparing the syllabus of Science Technology Society course. The term Anthropocene caused a debate in the university. And I was very interested to research how the term generated a lot of scientific controversy in the Czech community. Controversy is very interesting because it's necessary in science, and we need to weigh controversy every time. It's like opening Pandora's box. You mentioned Anthropocene, and you open a box with a lot of things, different things. Just get the most efficient machine, says the man, or decide on what efficiency should be. This is a first controversy. We can decide, like observer, if the left or the right man has the result or not. Why controversies are important in science? Bruno Latour said, the word controversy refers to every bit of science and technology which is not yet stabilized. Anthropocene is not yet stabilized. So, opening this Pandora box, the researchers, professors, students can decide in which part of the controversy they continue to trust. Where researchers are positioned in respect to controversy, respect to Anthropocene. many times it's not just a controversy of one or other discipline, but it's a crossing controversies between political, social, technical, natural, biological, different disciplines. And in the middle, we have this controversy. We have the positions of the philosophers, the position of social scientists, and position of geologists. So it's not just a binary vision, yes or no, true or false, but it's a multiple and complex position. The important thing of the observer is just observe. It's like the audience in a piece of theater that doesn't enter in the first act or the second act, but they enter in the third act. You don't know what happened in the first act and in the second act, but you need to observe and to think what happened there before. Who is the hero? Who is the villain? Just observe. It's the invitation that I think it's important for me, but it's important for the audience. Just observe what happened in this controversy. We have listened the Dan, the Paolo, and the Sara contribution last Thursday and this Thursday. But now, in this fourth speech, I think it's important just observe. Observe, shall not restrain your observation to any simple theory or methodology, but just observe the complexity, the complex controversy. You shall observe from as many viewpoints as possible, from the social scientist viewpoint, from the geologist viewpoints, and the third, you shall listen to actors' voices, the authors, the researchers, more than to your own opinion. This is very important. When we map, when we draw this controversy, we need to listen every voice, every single author. And when controversies flare up, the literature becomes technical. For this reason, in Science Technology Society, it's an interdisciplinary discipline. In Science Technology Society, we have engineering, we have philosophers, we have anthropologists, we have physics. Mapping of controversy is just a technical exercise. It's a scientific activity. The first step is to draw a cartography of this territory. Let me to really say, there are no definitions to learn, no premise to follow, no hypothesis to demonstrate in a controversy, no procedure to follow, no correlations to establish. Researchers in a controversy are not even asked to explain what they study, but only to observe a controversy and describe what they see. This work that I present today is a work in progress. I try to describe what I see, but I think it's important that each of you try to describe what you see. An example of cartography of a controversy is explaining this map. We have three generations. The first generation, they are the authors. The authors that Dan, Paolo, and Sara mentioned during these sessions. In the second generation, there is another author that recollects this information from different disciplines. And many times write scientific paper about a bibliographic review. With these different voices from first generation. Later, we have a third generation. The audience, the readers, the other authors. They try to understand this controversy. It's a good paper. I will not quote. I haven't read it. It's all wrong. I'm an isolated author. It's interesting because someone tried to recollect all this information, and later the audience, the readers, had different opinions about the text. In Yachitek, a first map about these scientific controversies is like this. We have a big A in the middle, in the core, and in the last session, and also in the previous session of the Sara, and the debate that was generated in September and October with the other faculty members, we have a lot of definition of Anthropocene. A question for meditation, a geological era perspective, an idea, a shock about two temporalities, a narcissistic mood, a symptom of Pachamama. Anthropocene is not a scientific term, is not validated by geologists, not a real geological unit. We have Holocene and now Anthropocene. No, we are in a late Holocene. A scientific possibility, a media event, a popular event, and said they say, where are you positioned in this map? I'm sure that you have a subjective view of Anthropocene. And you need to try to position it in some part. And like me, for example, Dan, Paul, and Sara, you are not audience of the third act of this piece of theater. We have entered in the first act. But we need, for me, I need to know who is the villain and who is the hero in the piece. So this type of exercise help us to drawing or research landscape to help me to position it, I think, in the best way, or just to observe the best map of these controversies, and later maybe I can decide where I put myself. I put my research activity, where I will follow the author in Anthropocene. The first thing is to decide the glossary, to start to draw this map. The glossary is one term, Anthropocene. It's very easy. Later, we need to decide the documentary repository. We have Scopus. The student knows Scopus, or Web of Science. It's a database with scientific publications, scientific paper. And so the second step is to search this term, Anthropocene, in Scopus and Web of Science, for have these multiple voices to help me to draw this scientific landscape. The third step is analysis of scientific literature. We have different ways to do this analysis. Bibliometric mapping, networks, or clusters grouping. It's interesting because many times a term is not so popular, and later 10 years, later 9 years, pop up, exploded, and a lot of researchers are interested in Anthropocene. Anthropocene was created in 2001, but for 8-9 years has not had a big impact in scientific community. Just in 2009, 2010, start to have this popularity. In Scopus, we find 1,037 papers, documents. We have papers, we have bibliographic review, we have letters, we have books. In Web of Science, we have 785 documents. These documents are published in this scientific journal. We have a scientific journal called Anthropocene, another Holocene. These are the most important journals for Anthropocene. Nature and Science also published 10, 12 papers about this topic. Nature 12 and Science 11. Document by authors, we have the most important author in Anthropocene, or the most interested author to work in Anthropocene that exists. William Stephen, the creator of the Anthropocene. Crutzen. Documents by affiliation. We can find documents by country, United States, United Kingdom, Australia. Documents by type, article, review, chapter. Just to understand the first map of this Anthropocene, and documents by subject area. This is the most important graph. We have 41% from environmental science, 33% from earth and planet science, 33% from social science, and so on. But where is the controversy? Just we have a map of the territory, but I don't know the political map of this territory. How is divided? Why we have this controversy, this conflict between disciplines? So, in a bibliographic review, we need to draw not just a map, but we need to draw the connections, the relation between nodes. For this reason, it's very important to work with networks. We have different types of networks to draw this controversy. Network and density of bibliographic coupling, network of all publication, network of the most cited authors, network of the term occurring in the publication, co-words analysis, the content of the title, the abstract, the keywords, cluster grouping in co-occurrence of terms, analysis, and density view, and so on. This is an example of bibliographic coupling. In green, we have authors from social science. In blue, we have authors from environmental science. In red, earth and planetary science. And pink, agriculture and biological science. A bibliographical coupling is not so interesting to observe a controversy because we have in the middle just authors that recollect all this information from different authors. Do you remember the map of the second generation author? Okay. We have the second generation authors. Maybe the fourth generation authors are in the periphery of this map. But it's interesting to observe how multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary is important in this controversy. Because when we observe a network like this, we recognize that we have a lot of authors that work in the middle. We have 4 big disciplines, but we have authors that to draw this controversy take from this part, from this discipline, from this area, and put together. This is a density visualization of the previous map. In the core, the red part, and in the big chart are the authors most important to do this exercise, to recollect all this information. But the authors in the periphery are important because they try to offer a different view, just from their disciplines. And for this reason, that controversy starts, because we have authors far from the core, just in periphery, but they work and they have important contribution about Anthropocene for our area, our discipline. This is another network of density, but it's at the contrary of the most cited and the most co-cited works. Just it's different because we have here not a core and a periphery, but we have different islands. And because many times the controversy is composed by sub-controversies. For this reason, we have a map of the controversy and we have islands there. We have a big island here composed by Chakrabarty, Donna Haraway, and Bruno Latour that come from philosophy or social science. And it's interesting because just to the right, in the middle, we have Stephen Krusell, the mainstream thinker about Anthropocene. And the density of the most cited and co-cited works, it's an important tool because we can understand how the controversies begin to generate in academic work. This is another type of representation. We have a timeline from 1861 to 2016. We have a very important author in 1861 that generated some important for Anthropocene context is Marsh. A map like this is interesting because we can identify, this is just the authors that are quoted more than 10 times. This type of maps, we can recognize how authors in 2006, 2005 generate a new line in Anthropocene context. So Krusell doesn't quote much, and he starts to work with Anthropocene from own perspective. It's the same, more or less, for Latour. It's the same for Stephen. So it's not so important the previous, but it's important the future work that he or she generate in this area. Another type of map is it's this in network and density of co-authors. Just we have authors from geology science, We don't have many philosophers or social scientists because it's not common to collaborate between a philosopher and a social scientist, but in the other type of science, yes. The co-authors, this map is just the notes represent a collaboration up to 5 papers, but another time. But we have just relations of authors and discipline. It's not useful for me because to map this controversy, I need to know the content. I need to know the words that these authors use. The third is and the last step of my exercise to mapping this controversy is creating maps based on the text corpus. Title and abstract, minimum number of occurrence of a term, 10, and verify selected terms. It's an exercise. This is working with a network. It's interesting because it's a technological. We are using a digital tool. 10 years before, it was not the same to do exercise like this. We use it to work in an offline way, in an analogical way, and we need to find references, to find papers, and we don't have this. We didn't have this type of tool. But now it's interesting because we just work with the screen. We just observe the map in the screen with the algorithm generate this map, and we can try to analyze. We can try to describe what we see. This is a very impact map for me that I discovered last week, and because now I understand why it's a controversy Anthropocene. Before of this, for me, it was okay. It's one position, it's another position, but it's not so scientific because it's okay, your position, but I needed to know in an objective way, in a scientific way, why we are in a controversy. It's for this. We have a concurrence term drawing in this network. In red, we have terms from titles, abstract. In the green, also from title, net abstract. And we have some connection, but this tool just composes these two clusters. And in the density view of these two clusters, it's very important to recognize how this network have an impact in the observer. We have a left cluster with the word with like increase, little ice age, global warming, late Holocene, result, hypothesis, Holocene, factor. And these are words that doesn't appear in the previous speech and in the previous of the previous Thursday. And I suspect that this word comes from another discipline, maybe from geology. In the right map, we have epoch, term, Anthropocene, new epoch, geological epoch, new geological epoch, human. In the chapter 2 of Sara, she says humans agency. Anthropocene era, we have agency, and we have idea, like in the, I don't know if the power or the dance session. action, challenge. We start to observe how controversy matters. Person, solution, self. We need more time to analyze these two maps, but in the first observation, we have, of course, cartography about this controversy. Resilience. Just observe a controversy. The researcher needs to explain what he or she sees. These digital tools are very important because help us to understand these controversies. And controversies are very interesting in science and technology, and are very interesting landscape, scientific landscape. And to conclude, Anthropocene is a huge contemporary controversy. But I don't have the solution. It's for this reason it's important that now we try to open a debate, and we try to position ourselves in one of each maps. Thank you. Okay, we can start the debate. We have 10 minutes before the presentation of the curriculum.